Hi, I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and thank you so much for tuning into one of our talks today. I'm so thrilled today to be joined by Jimmy Akingbola, who is currently starring in the BritBox series Kate Koji as the titular character of Koji. And the first thing I want to talk about is just this history of like great British two-hander sitcoms. And it feels like this sitcom really takes a lot of nods from like previous really revered sitcoms, but places it in a much more modern setting in terms of story and character. So were there conversations with everybody thinking about what some of the classic sitcom elements were from UK sitcoms that they wanted to bring into it, and then where they wanted to change it up stylistically a little bit and finding the voice of the show?
Thank you for that, because I've always said that this is like a modern day classic. You know, when I first read the scripts, I thought of shows like Frasier, Only Fools and Horses, but there's elements within the two characters, Kate and Koji. Like sometimes they're a bit grumpy. They've got the Larry David thing going through them as well. And the idea came about from what the writers told me, is that there wasn't many female working class characters on TV that were being allowed to be funny as well. And so they wanted to look at that, then also the conversation about asylum seekers. And then they just thought, like, what happens if we have this sort of working class woman that runs a cafe in a seaside cafe, and then this really posh African doctor, you know, that's highly qualified, you know, and a bit stuck up, and I'm being kind to him there. And then what happens when these two come together? And I think that old-fashioned thing of, are they going to become friends or not? And just that's like an old school structure, but the appetite's always there. If you think about it, like I watch reruns of all these classic shows that we're talking about, and so I think for them, they were like, how do we capture the nuances and the nostalgia of those great classic sitcoms that we still watch if we catch it on any of the channels today, but how do we make it modern? And I think that's where Andy Hamilton and Guy Jenkins have been very clever within the writing, because this show's basically, it's about love, warmth, and community and heart. But underneath it, there's politics, there's social media, there's racism, there's family, issues within family structures, and yet you'd be surprised that the show is only like 29 minutes long.
And within their creation and writing of the show, once you were on board in playing this character, was there much of an opportunity to really sit down with them and go through the scripts and dissect all of the details? And particularly as you went through filming the season, to start having certain aspects of input in what they were writing?
Yes, Mara, because I was very, for me, I talked to the writers about making sure that he's not being laughed at, you know, and they were like, yes, definitely not. It can't be that. Koji's not a victim, and that was important to me, because you know, it's the discussion right now about representation, but for me, it's always been about that when I play certain characters. And when you are playing a character that's going through something very serious, you know, to be an asylum seeker, then that has to be handled right. I think you can read the synopsis of the show and people could be a bit nervous about it, but I think it tricks you, it fools you. You think you're going to get one type of show, but it gives you a complete, it's more, actually, it's more clever than it looks, you know? I think you think, oh, I know what, this is going to be a soft light, you know, fun show. And it is, but underneath it, there's so much important information being shared. And I think comedy should be to entertain and whatnot, but there should be education and to inspire us to be better as people and, you know, one race, and look after each other.
And what was the journey of really striking that particular balance in terms of having the much more, you know, layered, serious elements within the show with that surface level of like, it is a comedy, it is a sitcom at the end of the day, and it is about kind of like landing those comedic beats as you were all figuring out tonally how to really jump between those and shift between those, particularly within just singular lines and single scenes?
Yeah, well, first of all, good writing, it makes our jobs much easier. You know, Andy and Guy, once you got the script, we hardly changed it. And if we weren't getting a beat, hitting it right, it's probably us, not the writing. One or two times, Brenda's amazing. She might give a note to the writers and they'll be like, yeah, that's much better. We're going to change that. But so it really helps that you've got good writing. But I think what happened, we said it has to be truthful, right? So in rehearsals, it was like, we've got to make this naturalistic and truthful. Just because it's a multicam sitcom doesn't mean that we have to go OTT with it. You know, some people love those type of shows, but we were like, we want to mold the style so it's slightly heightened, but it's also got the single cam, whether it's you know, Larry David, because I love that show, you know, Curb Your Enthusiasm, or something like I did before on BritBox called Rev, that single cam vibe. But how do you get that style within a multicam setting? And it's quite tricky, but a lot of us have done theater before. So, you know, this was a time before COVID. So you rehearse for 4 days, and then you find the rhythm of the writing. You feel like, I get where the beats are, but then you get the next added thing on the Friday. You got a live audience of 300 people. And so then sometimes it changes. You're like, oh, I thought the beat was going to be there with the laughter, but no, it's not. They're laughing at this bit. And so then it's actually enjoying that dance of we're owning the language, the text that we're talking about in our characters, but also the audience are another character for the show. And we're having to let them enjoy that moment. But we can't just be like, okay, have they stopped laughing? Start again. You got to stay in it. And I think that's the joy of doing a multicam sitcom that has got a lot of laughters like this show.
With the fact that with everything that you're saying, where it is essentially a multicam setup with the live studio audience and the way that it feels, but then it's filmed as a single cam, did that really kind of shape a lot of it in creating a much more intimate feeling to the show? Because it feels very much like you're right in there with all of the characters in all of the scenes.
Yes, it really did. I mean, and we were like that from day one in terms of rehearsals. It felt like I was rehearsing a play, and we were, Andy, a guy very good about the detail, like what are we saying, what's going on here between the characters, you know, what the backstories. There was nothing left in terms of just to be like excess of let it sag over there. Everything had a purpose, and that was within the movement as well. Because we're always in the caf, if we got up, we couldn't just get up, even though they let us play. But it was like, if our character's getting up, they're getting up for a reason. He's going to the toilet, he's going to buy something from the counter, or she's going to come to Koji or to a customer because we've already timed it that she's actually cooking an English breakfast. So again, I think it was just that thing of bedding everything in authenticity and making it naturalistic. And then I think you do that in the rehearsal space. You mark it out. You're in a tiny rehearsal room, and then when you get onto the film set, it's the same. And actually, you've got all the sort of chairs and the plates and stuff, but also the audience feel like they're in the cafe as well with you. And so, even though you're in a bigger space, it always felt intimate. And that allowed you, I think, not to have to play it so big. You could just play it like, yeah, we're all just having a cup of tea and eating some food together. And so I think we started off in the right way of like, intimacy is key, naturalism is important, but also just to have fun. And boy, we had fun.
It's so interesting the way that you're describing how even just standing up from a chair has to have a real purpose for that movement. And like you said, it takes place in a very tight quarters. And there's even jokes within the show about how the tables are too close together and there's really no space to actually move around. So what are the challenges in trying to create a character where you're actually delivering the majority of your performance throughout the entire series sitting in a chair at exactly the same table, but yet you still have to make it feel really dynamic and energetic and alive?
Yes. Oh, it's tricky. There's a great story I will tell you that there was a point, I think it was the second day of our first week of rehearsals, and we're doing the scene, and Brenda Blethyn, who's amazing, is just running around like a blue ass fly. And then you've got me, I've just been on this chair for like the whole episode. And she made a joke, it's like, are you just gonna sit there throughout the whole series? And actually, Guy and Andy looked at me and went, that's the way it's going to be. And for me, I loved the challenge of being still. You know, the character Koji is very precise. His paperwork's there, his bag's there, his tie needs to be right. So I really sat in that space. But it was tricky for me because when I looked at the stuff that Brenda was doing, I normally play comedic characters like that. If you look at the work that I do in Rev or Big School and stuff like that, I like those sort of, I don't know, busy characters. So it was really interesting for me not to do that and sit in his stillness. And then what you do though, the impulse to stand up and do stuff, to play and be creative, they would always let me, but I had to trust that he didn't need to get up. This is his space. Like this is his kingdom. This one table. This is where he does his crossword. And the only time he will get up is because to make a quick call or go to the toilet, or Kate has made him have to get up and confront her. You know, and then you just realize that it's like a dance. It's like the choreography is very simple, even for the cameras then. Yet no one was stuck. And that was the beauty of it. Like every move had a purpose. And then Brenda was just doing her 20,000 steps.
And then by that point, it feels very earned when there are those two moments and those two scenes towards the end of the series where we do see you outside of the cafe for the first time, and the show itself as a whole moves outside of the cafe. So yeah. How was that complete shift in talking about that stillness that you really had to focus on, to then thinking about the movement of scenes very differently and how they were going to live and breathe in completely different settings after establishing so much in that one space?
Yeah, I suppose what I would say within the stillness, there's always you're channeling energy, you know, so it's not sort of relaxed, switched off. He's always alive, and, you know, he's always very straight backed. So once we came out of that space, it was just a sense of continuing that, really, you know, like it's like he goes to the pub, but he's a fish out of the water. The whole show is like he sort of doesn't belong there, but he becomes one of the community, one of the family. But for me, it was like no matter what environment you put him in, outside when it's cold, he's still going to be the same. You know, I am very cold, but I am going to hold my coat in a certain way. You know, I'm gonna be cold, but in a very respectful way. and I love that. The challenge for me was to make sure the consistency of the character would remain the same. But at the same time, I love the challenges of the different spaces he found himself in would challenge that, you know? So even like getting a bit relaxed and having an alcoholic drink at the pub. There are some scenes in that episode where suddenly you see Koji, he's really enjoying the champagne. He's just like, you're not going to drink that. I'm going to have an extra drink. And I really enjoyed those moments because that showed how he's been affected by the environment. He is becoming more relaxed because they're becoming more friends, whether they realize it or not. And again, I think that is the beauty of the show, of the odd couple, really. They're the odd couple. And they are so stubborn. They could bicker and argue all night. Like the closing credits, you could close the credits, open up the show, and they'll still be arguing. And it was lovely to sort of play with that and realize that they are more alike than they realize, and they care for each other. And they can have a go at each other. But if you try and have a go at Kate or Koji, either one of them will come back at you, go, hey, don't say that about my friend, you know? And I just think that's beautiful.
Yeah, and I think the writing does a great job, like you said, that they're more alike than they realize, in crafting a lot of personality dynamics that are very similar between them. And obviously the main one is that they're both incredibly headstrong and incredibly particular and specific about how they want things, each in their own ways. So how much did you and Brenda really talk about where you wanted the similarities and that commonality within your characters to lie with each other?
You know what? We didn't that much, you know. I think that's... Me and Brenda, we'd never worked together before, but we gelled immediately. We were like best mates immediately. I hope she says the same thing. But again, I think the writing was already there, and we'd already done our work as characters. So we already knew we didn't have to talk that much. We played. So, you know, I would bounce off of what she was doing and what she was saying. She would bounce off of me. And so I think it organically happened. It organically happened because it's there in the writing. With Kate, you realize family's so important to her, you know? So the moment Koji sort of steps over that line, you know that we're in trouble. And at the same time with Koji, family's important to him in terms of what he's been through. And the moment you step over the line with that and it gets too close to what his secret is, he rears up as well. And so it was very easy just to know when those moments where it could be very fluid, but there are those moments where it's like, this is a no-go zone, you know, and yet they were rooted in similar places, which is, you know, from family.
Yeah. And to your point, the two of you didn't even meet until 2 or 3 weeks before you went into production on the show as well. So did you find that you were really just using a lot of that time just to build that rapport and that chemistry with each other, rather than, like you said, focusing on character and talking about the show, so that then you could just play off of that chemistry once you were on set?
Yeah. I definitely, just that thing of just getting to know people is quite nice. I think it helped that we had rehearsals, and it helped that I think we all had background in theatre. And I'm not gonna lie, it's Brenda Blethyn, you know, it's like working with the Queen. So there was a bit of a fanboy in me, you know. Secrets and Lies is a very good film, one of my favorite films, and you know, see her, you know, do a lot of the great work she's done in America, as well as the show she's doing right now, Vera, which is in its 10th, I think, season. So, and just being able to, I'm an actor that I'd love to talk, ask questions and hear stories. So I'll talk to her about like Mike Lee and stuff like that. I'd ask her about working at the National Theatre, and I think within those things of, we're all peers working together, but you share stories and parts of yourself which brings you closer together, and then that sort of seeps into the work naturally. And I think that was, because it was a small cast as well, that just became easy. Everybody was so lovely, and so suddenly you had a knowingness or a closeness that was already there just from being together during the lunch breaks and whatnot. And at the same time, that would be ahead of us in terms of where our characters were. So there were some times where I had to, like, no, don't be nice Jimmy with Brenda here. Like, this is Koji. They're not that familiar yet. And so, but it's really good to catch ourselves and do that, because we realized we know how far we've got to go, you know. And it is a bit like, okay, we've got plenty of time to see how long it takes for these two characters to come together.
And to that point, was there a difference in the way that you were building out a lot of the on-screen relationships for your character? Because he comes into the show and he doesn't have a pre-existing relationship with any characters in the series at all. And we see everything develop from the ground up. So was that slightly different in the way that you were thinking about interactions, because you're not necessarily building out any sort of relationship history between them?
Yes, definitely. There was a sense of, you know, as I work as an actor, you do your research, you keep reading the script, but it allowed me not to really have to worry too much about the other members within the cafe. You know, for me, Koji, he has his routine. His routine is go to the cafe, order that one cup of tea, do his crossword, keep an eye on his situation with his lawyer, and just get through the day and survive. And I think the show starts where it's that one day where she's like, this cafe's not busy enough. I need to earn more money. But this guy keeps coming in here. Who is he? I want to know more. And then that's where I think this whole show starts. But for me, the fish out of water element allowed me just to sit in the loneliness, actually. He's lonely, and he underneath the facade, there's a bit of sadness and loneliness there, and he's going through a really tough time. So at those times that he could be surrounded by loads of people, I also embrace that thing where he doesn't know anyone. He doesn't know anyone, and also he's very different from everyone as well, and he sounds different. But within that, Mara, I didn't want the pity. I wanted this thing of like, he's a king, but he's in a seaside town in the middle of nowhere, freezing. Whereas normally he would be a king, a very qualified doctor in the sunny, hot West Africa in a massive big house. And so within the show, for me, the pride had to always be there. Doesn't matter he's got that one suit and tie that he keeps wearing, or that one coat. You know, it's like he's a proud, proud man, and he's worked hard to get where he is. And you know, this is the bit where I suppose the reality of his situation, he's in trouble. He needs help, and his job, I think, Koji, is trying to let people in and support him, help him, you know. And I think he's so used to doing it on his own that it just takes time for him to allow Kate basically to be a part of his circle, which is nice in terms of a journey to play.
Yeah. And you just mentioned that he does have just that one outfit that he's wearing throughout the entire season. But I think it also says so much about him because he still wants to be fully presented. He's not just wearing a suit and tie, he's wearing, you know, the double vest underneath it as well. Yeah. So it's like that formality, even though he's coming and sitting in a cafe and doing a crossword and having a cup of tea, is something that's very important to him. So how did that really actually help you in understanding a lot of layers of what you were saying with kind of like that pride and how he wants to present himself to the world once you knew that you were going to have one costume for the entire show in that way?
I love it because this was my choice. Like, I was born in the UK, but my parents are Nigerian, and you know, so I'm West African, and yet one thing growing up, like Nigerians in particular, but West Africans, they've got great style, bright colors, and they like to dress really well. And I've always seen that. And so again, in thinking about representation and not playing a stereotype in terms of the story of an asylum seeker, me and the costume lady, we talked about that. I was like, I want this guy not to be presented in, you know, trainers, tracksuit bottoms, a carrier bag. Like, no disrespect, I'm not disrespecting anyone that's may arrive in looking like that, but I think that's part of the negative narrative of asylum seekers, you know, or the stereotype, you know, almost enjoying the trauma of that vision of it. And I was like, no, there are other stories, and I want this story to show that this guy's got his one suit. He fled with this one suit, and but he doesn't have much money, but appearance is important to him. Appearance is important to him. That's the way he's been brought up. He's a very educated man. He's a man that loves the English language as well. So even the way he talks is very British in some ways. You know, when you think of colonialism in Africa and how that seeps into the education, I feel he's a man that loves Shakespeare, and you could speak to him, and you might speak to some of his friends, and they might have a thicker African accent. Whereas him, he's like that. He likes it's a little clipped. And so once I got that suit on, that was when I said, there's Koji. That is when I said, there's Koji. I was still trying to find him. I was like, I think here he is. I knew I was going to have a shaved head and the glasses, because that sort of represented people that I'd seen growing up. And the glasses makes me think of my dad and one of my brothers, you know. But there was something about once I put that suit on, I was like, this is it. But I knew it wasn't a definite yes, so we tried to break up the suit as much as possible before we sent it to the producers. But also, we only sent them like one other look, which wasn't that good. So we were very clever. But for me, how he looks, that's when I really found him. I was like, here he is. It was like, you know, I had worked from the inside out, but as soon as I got that suit on, I was like, there he is. And I just think it's a great look, especially when you are looking at a working class woman at a cafe, you know, in her uniform every day, and then this guy in his, you know, lovely 3-piece suit, and just visually what that looks like as well.
Yeah. And then one of the other projects that you did recently that I wanted to ask about quickly is Ted Lasso, because, you know, it sounds like a lot of the way that show works and that Jason Sudeikis works is to stay really true to the script and the writing, because it's there in the material, but then also to have that freedom to do a lot of improv and just see what that discovery can be within scenes. And there's such a pacing with the way that he's able to do that. Like, he's able to do it at such incredible speed whenever he goes into those improv moments. And so how does that really force you to think very differently about your character? Because at that point, you can't be pausing to think about what their response has to be. It has to be fully within the fabric of you before you even walk onto set. So how does that really shift and change when you're working in that way?
You're right. So from Kate and Koji, Guy and Andy's writing, it's like music. So you try and do your thing. It's like clank, clank. You can't come off of it. You say what's written and you hit the beats, and then you have a great time. With Jason, I'd seen his character on YouTube and, you know, aware of his career, but also I'm a big fan of like improvisation. I've done stuff on stage, and I worked with Dustin Hoffman on what was it? SEO Trot, and and we had a script there. Richard Curtis had written it, and Dustin was like, just keep going. Let's just play. And I remember we riffed for about 10, 15 minutes, and Richard Curtis is like there on the camera, behind the camera, and Richard said, actually, that was really good. Go again. And so I really like to play, so I was ready to play with Jason, and actually. Jason saw that straight away, and we had a lot of fun. Again, not all of it made the show, but it's great where you can play with the dialogue was there and be respectful, because he's written it and sometimes other writers have written it, and so you have to be respectful. But when you are given the freedom to improvise as well from the truth of the characters, it's so much fun, and I find it freeing in some ways. And so yeah, we just had a lot of fun, and he made me corpse a lot, and he was like, that is very funny, do it again, keep that bit, and I would just try and change it all the time, but change it only when he's switching it up as well. So I think they must have had plenty of different takes that they could have used. But one of my favorite scenes is when I invite him to my restaurant, and there were some takes that I was just forcing him to eat a lot of hot food. I think some of it was quite hot.
And then one of the things that's so great is that you're not someone who just focuses on your own career. You've really thought about how you can help to build up other people's careers. And so I wanted to ask you about Triforce Creative Network, and just really where the genesis came from within that, and the way in which you're constantly striving and looking at different facets of the industry, and how you can make such an impact beyond even just the stories that you're telling.
Thank you so much. Sometimes you do interviews and people don't know about it, or they don't mention it. And Triforce Creative Network, we set this up over like sort of 17, 18 years ago. First, it started off just as an organization that was all about inclusion, basically, and diversity, before it became the buzzword over the last few years. And we saw, myself and my business partner, Fraser Ayres, saw an issue within the industry in terms of if you weren't a certain class. We've been talking a lot of class in terms of Kate and Koji. If you may be black, brown, or Asian, or or female, all the things that we're talking about. And we said, wouldn't it be great if we could utilize our careers and our relationships to create a platform for people to be seen by the gatekeepers, and then help them sort of move on in their careers. And we this came to us from Edinburgh Festival. Edinburgh Festival, everybody's there, actors, writers, directors, so much theatre going on, but it's much more of a family environment, support each other. Again, all these themes keep popping up: family, diversity, representation. And it was so good. The sun was out, and it was like, it's not like this when we get back to London. So we tried to hold on, bottle that feeling and that atmosphere, and then set up our company off of the back of that. And so for two actors to do that, it's quite a selfless thing as well. But we enjoyed that. So we created a number of initiatives. One was called Monologue Slam, which was for actors to be seen doing monologues by agents, managers, and casting directors. And so it doesn't matter if you're starting out, in the middle of your career, or your top of your career, you might want to do a monologue, you might want to be seen by a certain director and do something that you're not known for as well. And so what happened with this platform, that people got representation, they got cast in films and theatre from it. And the more we worked as actors, we were able to bring in the casting director from Holby City, or bring in Noel Clarke because he knows Fraser from a film he'd done in a year before. And so the momentum just built. And then we did the same with Writers Slam. And then writers and actors started collaborating, doing short films. So we did a short film festival. And so the natural next step would be to create a production company that's fully inclusive in terms of the content it's putting on screen, as well as the people that are making it. And now we're doing that. We've made our first ever panel show that's fully diverse in front and behind the camera, called Sorry I Didn't Know. I'm a host of that, as well as executive producer. We're working with UK TV as well on a slate of dramas that we're going to be producing and making with UK TV. And also we've got a couple of pitches in with the BBC and ITV. And so it's really important for us to carry on the way that we started, And we're really proud that within our content, our ethos is diverse and inclusive content for mainstream audiences. It shouldn't have to be marginalized or sidelined, the late o'clock show. It's like, this can be on main TV and everyone can enjoy it. Doesn't matter that we all look different, you know? And that's it really. It's quite simple, but it's not that simple. It's a lot of work to sort of get commissioners and the gatekeepers to really understand that and see that representation really matters. And actually it's about the stories as well. There's so many different type of stories that need to be told that are not being told. You know, you can't just do the same thing over and over and think that you're ticking the boxes. So yeah, we're a bit like insiders, outsiders, you know. But as the years have gone on, we've grown in terms of, I really enjoy my acting career growing each year, but I also enjoy working with different networks, meeting different producers, because that helps my production company and that helps us help other writers and actors. And so, yeah, it's exciting times. And if you're an actor in the US or the UK or anywhere, check us out, www.btcn.com.
I think it's so fantastic, everything that you've already accomplished with that, and really look forward to seeing everything else that you do with that. And congratulations on everything with Kate and Koji as well. Thank you so much, Jimmy.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you so much, Maura. Thank you.